Welcome to this knowledge clip about environmental impacts categories for food systems. When talking about the environmental sustainability of the food system, what are we talking about? In this knowledge clip, I describe several important environmental impacts that are relevant when talking about the environmental sustainability of the food system. Today, we are faced with many pressures: deforestation, biodiversity loss, air pollution, degraded soils, eutrophication, plastic soup, and the list goes on. Food production and consumption is an important driver of many of these pressures, but it's also a victim of these pressures. For instance, rising temperatures is predicted to lower yields of major crops like wheat and rice in many places across the globe. That is why it is important to take a critical look at the food system and its role in driving these impacts. To do so, we need to quantify the environmental impact of the food system. Environmental impacts can be assessed with a life cycle assessment, which was explained in the previous knowledge clip. In a life cycle assessment, the environmental impact is calculated in a holistic way, taking into account every stage of the food's life cycle. You may have heard of carbon footprint, which is one of the environmental impact categories relevant for food systems. But there are many more. For example, climate change, which is the same as carbon footprint, land use and land use change, terrestrial acidification, freshwater and marine eutrophication, water use, and fossil resource use. In the next slides, we will take a closer look into these impact categories. First, climate change or carbon footprint. Climate change refers to the change in the average climate patterns globally induced by human activities, including agricultural activities, burning of fossil fuels, or deforestation. These activities result in high concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which cause Earth's temperature to rise with profound impacts on quality of life. Greenhouse gases block the heat from escaping and therefore making the Earth warmer. Some examples of greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, and dinitrogen oxide, also known as laughing gas. These gases have a different climate change or global warming potential that is expressed as a unit equivalent of carbon dioxide. The main sources of carbon dioxide include burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and forest degradation, while methane is emitted during livestock breeding, rice farming, biomass burning, fossil fuel exploitation, and in landfills. While fertilizers are necessary for healthy soils and long-term production, they do produce nitrous oxide, which is a potent greenhouse gas. And the reason why animal foods, in particular meat, are having a much larger carbon footprint than plant foods is due to carbon dioxide emitted during deforestation for soy production, which is used to feed the animals, as well as methane emitted from ruminants through their digestive processes and from manure management practices. Carbon footprint is often reported as kilogram carbon dioxide equivalents. Another condition associated with climate change is land use change. It is understood as a change in the purpose for which the land is being used by humans. It has a direct impact to climate change when the transformation of land reduces carbon stock in soil and generates greenhouse gas emissions. The default calculation approach takes a retrospective approach looking at what happened in the past 20 years. The impact of land use change is reported as part of the total climate change impact. Deforestation is a major issue facing global agricultural production systems. Well-known examples of deforestation include crop cultivation, for soybean production in Brazil and Argentina, and palm oil production in Indonesia and Thailand. In total, 8% of global CO2 emissions are attributable to land use change. Land use or land occupation, on the other hand, refers to the area of rural or urban land that is occupied for a certain period of time, often reported as square meter per year. Acidification is another important impact. It is related to the change in acidity of soil, which is due to atmospheric deposition of acidic substances. It includes all impacts of acidifying nutrients causing changes in soil chemical properties. Some examples of emissions causing acidification are nitrogen oxide, ammonia, and sulfur dioxide. Ammonia largely comes from agriculture, while nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide mostly comes from burning of fossil fuels. These emissions cause soil fertility to decline, having a severe impact on species and agriculture in general. Acidification is often reported as kilogram sulfur dioxide equivalents. Another impact category is eutrophication. It includes all impacts of excessively high environmental levels of macronutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus in water bodies. Eutrophication is the enrichment of water bodies with nutrient-rich pollutants, where excessive nutrients induce growth of algae and plants, resulting in a green film on top of water and causing oxygen depletion, leading to suffocation and loss of species in the water. In marine or salt water, the limiting nutrient is nitrogen, and therefore marine eutrophication is often reported as kilogram nitrogen equivalents, while in freshwater, the limiting nutrient is phosphorus, and therefore freshwater eutrophication is often reported as kilogram phosphorus equivalents. And there's water consumption. Water consumption is a portion of water use not returned to the original water source. Typically, it looks at blue water, which is the water in surface and groundwater reservoirs. In agricultural systems, most water is consumed for irrigation. Water is commonly reported in cubic meters. Foods that have a high water consumption include meat, nuts, and irrigated crops. So that was a quick look into climate change, land use change, terrestrial acidification, eutrophication, water use, which are several of the most relevant environmental impact categories for food systems. Thank you for watching this short introduction about environmental impact categories. I hope you enjoyed this knowledge clip and have a better idea of the environmental impacts relevant to food systems.